Racing games has been a genre in the video game world that has always been evolving since its humble beginnings, from the arcades, to the PCs, and to the home consoles. A significant innovation in the genre was in '97, with the release of While the idea of a car simulation isn't a new thing, the release of Gran Turismo took the idea on a whole new level, with licensed car, realistic physics, at least for the '90s, and providing a whole polygonal world to race in. At least for the time being, it was the most valid form of a racing simulation, and was very successful sales-wise, and set the gold standard of racing games in general. Like any big innovator, others would try to replicate its success, which led to mixed receptions. However, one of the most interesting attempts was from none other than Namco, being one of the early innovators of the racing genre with the likes of pole position. In the late '90s, Namco was dominating the market with fighting games like Tekken and their popular arcade racer.
Ridge Racer! Remember that one?
Now, Ridge Racer's first three entries were all traditional arcade racers. Then the release of R4 continued the arcade tradition, but also emphasized storytelling with character-driven narrative, and utilized some aspects of the simulation game, like more nuanced car handle mechanics. Overall, a more ambitious arcade racer took advantage of the PlayStation hardware graphically and gameplay. After R4, Namco released Ridge Racer 5, which departed from the ambition that R4 established and returned to its original roots from the first three games, leading to a mixed reception. However, with 5 games under their belt, the following entry took a bold and unexpected approach. Released in 2003, Racing Evolution is the 6th entry of the Ridge Racer series, and is considered a spin-off of the series. Capitalizing on the success of Gran Turismo, this game is a car simulation with a sprinkle of arcade racing. But the million-dollar question is, does this game deliver in the same level as a Gran Turismo, or just a car simulation in general? We'll find out. Presentation-wise, you can tell this game is from the early 2000s based on the Y2K aesthetics on the menus and even on the soundtrack. Game modes are the usual features of a car simulation game, such as arcade, time trials, and the biggest one here, the story mode. Then there is an event mode, which is an extension of the story mode, I would say, and it's kinda similar to the career mode in Gran Turismo, but specifically in the licensing test part of the game. With the exception that you must purchase each race event, which I find very insane. Imagine if you need to pay up every race event in Gran Turismo. It's kinda how it is in Racing Evolution. Now wait, what is story mode about if the event mode is already its own thing, where you do the career S type of races? Well, I'm glad you asked, because one of the biggest selling points on this game, which you can find out on the back cover by the way, is, I quote, a spectacular storyline that chronicles the intense rivalries found only within the professional circuit. And yeah, I guess one thing that stood this game out from the rest of the car simulators is that there's a story mode. And I'll be honest, the story, it isn't anything to write about. Aside from it starting with your protagonist, Rena Hayami, becoming a race car driver because she drove her ambulance fast when delivering an injured race car driver to the hospital. Which then led to a race car manager being like, hey, you're good, join my league. And yeah. In addition to that, the game features licensed cars from Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Mini, Ford, Dodge, and a few other manufacturers that, believe it or not, predated Gran Turismo 4. Overall, the mode that you may be in most would be the story mode, as is the way to gain cars for your garage, as the car dealers doesn't always have all the accessible cars right then and there, and even then you need to complete event mode 2 in order to get access to certain cars as well. I gotta say though, I do like the idea how in certain chapters in the story mode you can choose the car you want to race, and by completing it you get awarded that car and able to use it for event mode. Speaking of, it is also important to note the styles of racings you have in this game is about the same. You know, you have your GT circuit racing rally, but also, which predated Gran Turismo 7, you have drag racing. And I know, that is cool enough, but how do the controls handle? Keep in mind, when it comes to driving mechanics, the golden standard for me personally is Gran Turismo 3. I would even argue 3 has better controls than 5, but that's not either here nor there. Regarding our racing evolution, I would say it's not bad. It handles decently. Of course, not polished as like Gran Turismo, as gas release feels a little off, but controlling your car feels good. You're able to control it, you know. One of the biggest things I learned in general when driving is how you say it. If you're able to control your car, you're good. You know, if you're unable to control your car, you're gonna have a bad time. But yeah, however, there are two elephants in the room. So the first one, rally races. They are probably the most annoying part of the game. I feel the way how any car interacts in the dirt feels very off and drifts in times where you don't want to drift. Like I don't know what it is, but it just feels a bit awkward. And this is a big deal because rally of course emphasize a lot in time. So one slip up, and I mean one slip up, will impact your best results, which it took me a while to complete certain story missions that had to do with rally racing. The best way to describe the rally racing, it feels like a poor man's Sega rally. Now, the second elephant in the room is the slipstreaming mechanic. Now, this game is supposed to be a hint at simulation, right? However, once you're close to passing your opponent's car, they can act aggressively, but not enough to the point where they don't want you to pass, as the CPU gives you plenty of room for you to pass them. Thus, sometimes some of the races feel like a breeze. And yeah, of course you can up the difficulty, but then sometimes I feel like the CPU can be a little unfair. But yeah, the CPU just feels very not competitive is probably the best way to say. But yeah, I guess those are the only two issues. Other than that, the driving controls are decent. I really, really can't complain about it. And I feel like if you're coming from the Gran Turismo lens, you're not gonna have a bad time in this one. Similar to the driving, the graphic itself is not bad. Of course, it's not as polished as Gran Turismo, but the car models don't look half bad, especially when it comes to the reflection of the lights in the car selection screen. Unfortunately, once you start the race, the reflection of the environment is gone. Despite that, the small number of race courses, the environment itself in the race courses look alright, they look different and it doesn't feel like you're racing the same course. And it's bright and colorful, which is also a good thing because it shows its variety. Even if the race courses in this game is very, very, very limited to a Gran Turismo or any racing games from that time. To add on to the Y2K factor that this game has, the music plays a big role in it, as it has this trance techno electro sound that was big in the 2000s, and mixed with some funk and jazz here and there. And then a big factor to that as well is that The three composers in this game are, from my understanding, Namco veterans, and they have composed two games like the Tekken series, Ridge Racer games, and even Katamari. Now, finding any sort of history for this game was very limited, especially when it came to like developer interviews and such. However, according to an IGN interview back in November of 2003, they interviewed Yosuhiro Noguchi, director of Namco's localization team. And what was interesting is that he stated that as early as 2001, this game was in development due to having a meeting where they discussed about having a story mode in this car simulation game. Thus, one can speculate that this was trying to capture the success of Gran Turismo 3. Aside from that, this is one of the first games that Namco released globally at the time, which is believable as each cover art and each region represent a different car in the cover art. As for console exclusives, interestingly enough, the Xbox version added a Hummer, and in the PAL regions, they added a few European cars that's not present in the American version. Other little tidbits about this game is that your rival in this game is like the mascot for Ridge Racer DS, which is a remake of Ridge Racer 64. And another fun fact, I guess you could say, is that if you got an early copy of this game, you likely got a copy of Pac-Man vs. Which is that Pac-Man game created none other by Shigeru Miyamoto. Our racing evolution is something that I probably wouldn't call an evolution, but more of a reminder of the type of evolution the genre was going through at the time. Even though I personally enjoyed the time I had with this game, despite its flaws, I was able to sit through the game, which is something I can say for many racing games, especially car simulators, as Gran Turismo honestly has spoiled me with the handles of their cars. I wouldn't consider this a hidden gem either, as I do recall that this game was everywhere back in the day. The reason why it might have not sold a lot is the reality there was a lot of options for racing games at the time. Especially since some of these games had a lot more variety in them, such as more courses and even more cars to some extent. And while there is replayability in Racing Evolution, it does get a little tedious once you beat the story mode because event modes that they give you, with the limited courses, it does feel a little repetitive to the point where it can be a little boring. Granted, you do get some cool stuff from it, but if I was given the option of Gran Turismo 3, which was a game that came out much earlier, or this, I would 100% pick Gran Turismo 3. That said, I can appreciate the fact that I tried something different by emphasizing a story mode, but overall Racing Evolution is a product of its time, and one that I could easily see myself playing as a weekend rental. And with that, there isn't much to say. All I gotta say is that this game may not be for everyone, but I'd say give it a shot if you love car simulators. It'll give you a better sense of an idea how the market was before a time of Gran Turismo 4 and Forza.